This happened when I was 14 years old and staying at a friend's house. It was a cold, misty, moonless October Friday night. Halloween was upon us and all the usual pranks that come along with it. In the weeks up to that night, the usual pranks of knocking on doors and running, friends knocking on windows to scare you or stuff like that. But this night was different. This night is what nightmares are made of. Recently my friend's sister, for this story we'll call her Jamie, was being harassed and stalked by some guy who she didn't know. We just came back from a haunted house. Then we turned on the TV and started to watch The Exorcist in the living room. It had to be around 11 or midnight, and the dog started to bark at the back door. So I went to see what she was barking at, and I heard the fence rattle. I didn't think anything of it as it could have been the wind or an animal. So I went back in the living room and continued to watch TV with my friend. Then all of a sudden, "Bah!" Jamie screamed from her room. We ran to see what was going on. Jamie said someone was knocking on her window and saw someone run to the back of the house. Just then, we heard someone trying to pry open the sliding back door, and when I ran in there, I saw someone standing there with a ski mask and hoodie on. His eyes were void of feeling, void of any sense of morality. I made sure the extra lock was set, and he seen me do this and started to bang on the glass. Then all of a sudden he took off running. I asked my friend if the front door was locked, and a look of terror came over his face. He ran to lock the front door, then all of a sudden it swung slightly open. Luckily he got there in time to stop it from opening completely. The intruder got his arm inside the door, kept pushing it open so ever so slightly, but my friend yelled for me to help as Jamie was frozen and frightened, screaming. I ran as fast as I could and slammed my shoulder into the door, smashing the intruder's arm in between the door and the door jamb. He jerked his arm out enough that we could close the door and lock it. The stalker was screaming and banging on the door, yelling over and over, "Jamie, I'm gonna get you. If not tonight, but be another time. And I'm going to kill those kids for what they've done." I grabbed a baseball bat and my friend grabbed a shotgun out of the closet. We thought he was going to try and get back in. We called the police and waited what seems like hours before we went up to see if anyone was around. But all we found was handprints on windows and footprints in the mud leading to the backyard. The stalker's identity was never found out. And after that incident, Jamie was never bothered again. But after the incident, Jamie was never the same. She was quiet, distant, and it was hard for her to trust people. It took a long time for her to be herself again. It makes you think you never know who's watching you, who's following you in person or on social media. You don't know what their intent is, or if they have nefarious intentions. The world has become an information nightmare, and for that you'd never know who is spying, peeping, and lying, waiting to ambush you. You always have to be aware of your surroundings and ensure you are able to keep yourself safe. Wait. This happened 9 years ago when I was 15 years old. It was a Friday morning at school, and my friend told me that she would spend the night. Throughout the day, we spoke about what we could do for entertainment, but by the end of the day, she let me know that she couldn't stay for the night. On my way home, my mother texted me to let me know that I would be home alone tonight because she picked up a shift from 7 to 7. She was a nurse and that happened frequently. My mother started dinner while I was watching TV in the living room. But as I'm watching TV, I randomly look out of the window because I heard a car going down the street, and like I usually do, I look at it because we live right at the end of a dead-end street. This car didn't stop, it just circled around and crept down the street. About 30 minutes later, I saw the same car while I was watching TV. It did the same thing. Went to the end of the street and very slowly and turned around. The windows were tinted, so I couldn't really see how many people were in there. It was around 6:30 when my mother was walking out of the door. It was the winter time, so it was already dark outside, but it was unusually warm also. So I threw my mother's food away because it was trash, and she could never cook, and I made a few bags of popcorn. I was content with that. I laid on our couch, turned on movies and started to text my friends. It also became hot in there, so I opened a window that was behind the couch. My mother hated when I opened it up because there's no screen, so I opened it up just a few inches and laid back down. A few minutes later, someone knocked at the door. As I'm getting up, I can hear about 3 people talking, only because my window was open, but I don't think they noticed it because it sounded like they were whispering in a way where they definitely did not want me to hear. I opened the door, expecting to see a few people, but to my surprise I only saw one. Parked a few houses down, I saw the car that kept riding up and down the street. But anyways, when I opened the door, the man asked me, was Daryl home? I said no, Daryl lives here. Then he asked me, were my parents home? And I said no, my mother's gone for the night. He said okay, with a smirk on his face. And he said sorry to bother you, and he left. I lay down, watching a few movies, then I dozed off, maybe around midnight, and I think, all of a sudden, I was awakened with a sound. I didn't know what it was. I looked at the clock and it said 3:02 a.m. Then I heard another noise. It was footsteps behind me outside of the window on my front porch. I continued to lay down flat on the couch, then I stuck my head just above the back of the couch very slowly. I've never been so frightened in my life. There was a man pressing his face against my front window trying to look inside. I was frozen in fear. I don't think he could see me because I was right under him, and it was dark inside with the only light being my TV. Then the guy did something that almost made me scream. I laid flat again on the couch and the guy in the window said, "She'll sleep right there. If she screams, I'll shut her up." He then started to lift the window. I ran in the kitchen and grabbed my mother's gun while he struggled with the window. As I'm running, I dialed 911 and put them on speaker. I explained the situation, ran to the window with the gun, pointed it and told him that I would shoot, and the police are on the way. The guy was halfway inside when I held the gun to him. He froze while the other guys ran off the porch. I made the guy stay there when the police were on the way. He was arrested and my mother never took a night shift again. At the same time, I'm glad my mother taught me what to do in those type of situations because could have ended up a lot worse. This story happened August 14, 2003, when I was 14 years old. I lived on the street that had a lot of boys on it. All of us were the same age and will frequently spend the night over each other's houses and simply just hang out. There were literally around 10 boys the same grade. It was a Thursday afternoon when 5 of my friends came over to hang out. We were all inside my room when all of a sudden the power went out. I yelled outside my window to tell my father because he was cutting our grass. I went to check the fuses, but the power never turned back on. All of my friends went home, and shortly after that, they all started calling me telling me that their power was also out. So we all met outside and played football in the street. At this point, it was all 10 of us plus other kids. Once it started to become darker outside, we started to notice that it was a blackout, but we didn't know the severity of it. It was very hard to see, so we all grabbed flashlights and played hide and seek. We ran everywhere on our block. My parents rode down our street while we were playing, along with other parents. After a while, we saw some old guy walking down the street that we didn't know, but we didn't pay any attention to him. As it grew later, we all decided to go home. A few guys came to my house, but no one's parents were home. At least that's what I noticed. I don't think anyone else noticed it, though. My friend across the street stayed home, so we all called him. He was telling me that he wished that his mother would stay out of his room. I asked him why did he say that. He said because when he went to his room, his underwear was dumped all on his bed everywhere. I said that's weird. Then he said, I keep hearing her upstairs walking around the room. I told him that's impossible. Then me and a few of my friends got up and looked out of my window across the street at his room. I asked him, does he still hear the footsteps? And he said, yeah. Then we all saw someone walk across his window. It was that random guy we saw earlier. I told him that is not his mom, and to get out of the house. Then we called our other friends, ran across the street and ran into the house. We beat the crap out of that guy and called the police. We come to find out that this guy had been arrested in the past for similar acts. Luckily we saw him when we did, as who knows what would have happened.